Welcome to the show, Lin Hall. You majored in business and media at Wayne State University and have had various roles within the entertainment business. You've been a talk show host, a radio presenter, account manager. You've handled the Motown account as liaison, and you've also been a documentary filmmaker. Along with that, you also partnered with Preston and Alan Glass, recording artists such as Earth, Wind and Fire, Kenny G, George Benson, to name just a few that you've worked with. So there's a great much more to talk with you about, Lin. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the show, and please tell us more.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I wash the dishes every night too, Tom.
Hey. This is it. You see, multifaceted.
Yes, sir. No, it's a real pleasure to be here. And Skyler and I do go back. Skyler is an incredibly talented man, and his vision has always been there. This global change thing it's absolutely fascinating, and I'm just glad to be here. But my musical background is like most people. You either are in it from birth, or you find yourself in it by chance. Mm-hmm. And I've been on both sides of that. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know that Detroit, before the auto collapse years, was an incredible place to live. I grew up in the best neighborhood this world has ever seen. And I'll tell you, musically, the people that lived in my neighborhood, Motown artists, all of the original artists, came from my neighborhood. They all lived within 6 blocks.
Wow.
So I just fell into this whole musical environment. Barrett Strong lived right around the corner. Melvin Franklin lived 3 doors down. Frida Payne lived around the corner. And it goes on and on. I mean, you name an artist, they were in my neighborhood. Yeah. So we grew up with nothing but music. That singing on the corner thing that you hear about, absolutely true. I mean, even before any of these things happened, that environment was there. So I've been blessed from that particular standpoint. I didn't see myself at the beginning going into music because I had a business mind. Numbers was my thing. I wanted to explore the financial world, and that's what I did. I mean, I went into banking, and that's how I ended up with the Motown account as liaison. I got 1,000 stories. You'll need about 3 hours of that, about that experience. But knowing the game from both sides has been my privilege. A lot of artists don't know how this game works. They don't know how the numbers work. And that's been a challenge for me, is to educate people about how it actually works from beginning to end. Save yourself a lot of heartache and begin to appreciate the fact that this is a complicated business. And the only way that you're going to be successful is to have knowledge, as you know, Scott. So
it's power.
It's just no doubt about that. Having power and knowledge will get you the success that you really want to have. But growing up in that environment was absolutely mind-boggling. Aretha Franklin's father's church was a block from my house. So in the summertime, you could hear Aretha because all doors were open. You could hear Aretha 2 blocks away singing.
That's amazing.
And the variety of talent that came out of that neighborhood was also amazing. It was fascinating growing up. Barry Gordy lived 3 blocks away. Harvey Fuqua lived next door to Barry at one point in time. Marvin Gaye lived down the street. I mean, I could go on for days talking about the talent that came out of that.
Yeah.
But growing up in that environment was a blessing.
Yeah.
Not only from the musical side, but also knowing the business from both sides of the fence. And that also was a part in Alan and Preston and I getting together because that's what I brought to the table. They had the talent. Let's not kid ourselves about that. I'm not a songwriter, but they had the talent. And I wanted to forge a way into this game, knowing what I knew about the business and sort of heading up that division of Glass House. It was a real treat, man. And working with those 2 men over the years. And the talent that we were able to record was a plus, a real blessing.
Yeah.
But looking back on all of it, especially going back to the Detroit thing, I really want to emphasize this because a lot of people don't know about how that whole explosion happened. They know about Barry Gordon and his genius and that kind of thing, but they don't know the beginnings of it and what it was really like. And they many don't know about the merge of Motown and Golden World record label. Golden World actually was hot on Motown's tail for a few years. And that's because they had some outstanding artists. And Motown had gone sort of pop R&B, but Golden World was like hanging into the strict R&B pocket. So a lot of people don't know that Parliament was signed to Golden World.
Wow.
The Reflections, Romeo and Juliet, the white group out of Detroit.
Okay.
They had an outstanding record there. And then they had J.J. Barnes. You need to Google him.
Yeah.
Because you'll see why Barry, when you listen to J.J. Barnes, you'll know why Barry said, I got to get this.
Oh, wow.
Because J.J. sounded just like Marvin Gaye. It wasn't like he was copying. It was just a natural kind of tone that he had, that unique tone that Marvin had.
Yeah.
And so between their coming up in the Detroit market and getting national and international attention, it was a good move for Barry. So all that came together. Edwin Starr was at Golden World before he went to Motown.
That tune War was it good for?
Yeah, War. Edwin Starr.
Yeah, that's Edwin Starr.
And he spent a lot of time in England too.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's the roster they had. That's just part of the roster. They had a hot roster. So Barry swept in and took that and incorporated them in. Rare Earth. Do you remember that group?
Oh,
Rare
yeah.
Earth?
Get ready.
Yeah.
That song was 19 minutes.
Amen. Yeah. So they were a part of that roster too. It was the old Rick Tick, Golden World record label combo. And the whole Detroit scene was off the charts. I can't even begin to tell you what it was like to live there during that time.
Yeah,
you can imagine.
Yeah, the Bay Area was like that in another sense,
Exactly.
Although we didn't have no labels, we had what's the guy name? Bill Graham. We had him. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
And he kind of held the glue of all of the bands came out of the Bay. Tom, you got a question?
Well, yeah, I mean, just looking at all the talent you've worked with, you also you've had a number of UK acts and artists that you helped develop or that were developed as part of it. How did it spread from the artists that you got over there in the US through to sort of a global thing? Was that just by chance, or how did that happen?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, Tom. I appreciate it too, because we signed a publishing deal with A&M on their publishing side. It's called Rondor. Rondor actually was both US and UK.
Okay.
So from the very beginning, we began to work with English acts, European acts, Imagination.
Imagination, I remember that.
Yeah. So we had our slot in terms of the European market. So we were always either co-writing or recording with UK or European artists. And that came from the publishing deal, of course.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Good question.
Thank you.
Ryan, you got a question?
I'm interested in, I'm hearing your voice, Lin, and I looked at your bio and I can hear now why you were in radio as well. And it said you were voiceover talent. How did you get in a start in that?
Oh man, you really know the questions that I asked them. Yeah, let me tell you this story. I had always privately had aspirations to do radio.
Okay.
But, in business, I was primarily used to do speeches for civic and community groups, outreach for bank. And then I went to work for Blue Cross Blue Shield as a liaison to the big three auto groups. So I was always like on the speaking, tours in Detroit area and the United States. But I had a secretary. There was a radio station in Detroit called WJZZ. They had a contest, 50 words or less, why you would like to be in broadcast.
Oh boy.
So check this out. my secretary comes into my office at lunchtime and asks, Mr. Hall, could you please help me work out this 50 words or less for this contest? You know about the contest? I said, yeah. That was like a great opportunity. So I said, I'll be glad to do. So I spent my lunch hour to write this 50 words or less for her to present in this contest. Well, she came back from lunch and I showed it to her, man. I said, this is really dynamite to myself.
Yeah.
So I showed it to her and she came back about 20 minutes later. She said, I don't like it. I said,
Okay.
well, okay.
Come right out.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, I said, okay. So on my way home, man, I'm thinking, I'm not going to waste this. I'm going to send it in myself to prove a point to this that she should have taken it. About a week later, I'm driving home on the freeway and they're announcing the winner of the contest. And they said, the winner of the contest is Lin Hall.
Oh, wow. On the radio.
Nice.
On the radio.
In the car.
In the car.
That's
so I'm saying, this is crazy. So I get home and I call the program director at the radio station. And the deal was that you get a scholarship to broadcasting school.
Okay.
And then afterward, you go to work for that radio station, which was WJZZ. I did that course in broadcasting. And, it was pretty much a snap because I had so much experience in public speaking leading up to that. So at the end of it, I had about 4 or 5 offers, even before I graduated from broadcasting school. Wow. But I took the one from ABC, the ABC affiliate in Detroit.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So check this out. What happened though, I had already agreed that I'd go to work for JZZ after the school. So he calls me up and he said, man, I hear you doing a show on WXYZ, the ABC affiliate. And I said, yeah, I am. He said, well, you got to fulfill this commitment. And I said, I'm willing to do that. He said, but you can't do it with your name. So
what?
Yeah, I went on as an air personality under another name. Long story short.
Yeah,
but that's how I got into broadcasting.
Okay. Did you have like a DJ name or like a sign off, signature sign off?
Yeah, it was just Lin B.
Lin B. All right.
Everybody in the neighborhood called me B, so everybody knew who I was.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then I got to do my musical thing because JZZ was like a smooth jazz station.
Okay.
One of the first of its kind, back then. And so not only was it a lot of fun, but, obviously it kind of fit into my pattern of living at the time. Yeah. So that's how I got into broadcasting.
50 words or less. All right.
50 words or less.
What that could be a little documentary right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. My girl, she got so mad about it that I'm serious. She quit. She quit after about a month. She couldn't take it. And she had to walk around my office every day.
You stole my job, right?
Yeah. I told her, I said, well, I wrote it for you.
Yeah.
That's just like when you write a song for somebody and they say, I don't want it. You give it to somebody else and it turns out to be a platinum seller,
I love it. Listen, because you know what this show is about and stuff like that.
Yes, sir.
So you said you lived down the street from Marvin Gaye?
Yeah, originally. Marvin was a very good friend. And a lot of people don't know this about Marvin. I'll tell this real quick story, and then it'll lead to what my point is. Marvin was an incredibly kind man, and you would want to hang with him.
Okay.
After just talking to him for 5 minutes. I mean, because he was that kind of cat.
Yeah.
He would lean to your interests more than he would lean to his own.
Okay.
But Marvin was out in LA. I'll tell this story because it kind of tells you what Marvin was really like. He was out in LA and he went into this furrier and he presented his MasterCard and bought a fur coat, right? Well, that's when I was still at the bank. And the furrier kicked it back to the bank because it was over his limit. Well, Marvin didn't even know what his limit was. A lot of the Motown artists didn't know what their limit was in terms of credit and that kind of.
Right.
He just had a card, right? Because the bank just shipped credit cards to everybody at Motown because they knew they obviously could spend it right away, and they did most.
And they got a job, yeah.
Yeah. So he had. I'm not going to mention the number of his credit limit, but he went over.
Okay.
So they called me in. They said, "Lin, you got to go out there and get this money for us, man. Have him sign off on this thing because we can't take that kind of loss." So I went out to his house. He had moved out to near the suburbs then, the big mansion. Went out and I knocked on the door and he wasn't there, but his bodyguard answered the door and said, "Marvin's out here running on the street," because he ran all the time. Okay. Marvin fancied himself as Olympic athlete.
Yeah,
and a football player.
And he played basketball too. I saw him play.
Yeah, he wasn't no good. He wasn't no good. You saw that Don Cornelius thing?
Right.
Yeah. No. Marvin couldn't play no ball, Okay. No, he was no good at all. Anyway, but he fancied himself as an athlete. And he would work out every day. So he was running down his street and he came in. I said, "Marvin, we got to take care of this, man. What can you do?" And he said, "Hey, man, I didn't even know I had a limit." I said, "Yeah, you do."
Yeah.
So he signed off on it. I took it out. Everybody was happy. But from that, we started working out together because he really fancied himself as somebody who could do both things, be an athlete and also be the great singer that he was. So he wanted to go to the camp of the Detroit Lions.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yes, he did. Serious. And because it was sort of a publicity kind of thing for the Lions, he did. I mean, all the media was there and all that whole thing. Yeah. Marvin got racked up so bad in the first 2 or 3 days. It didn't take him long to change his mind.
Oh, yeah.
So I told him, I said, "Marvin, we're not cut out to do everything." So accept it. But he loved football. Yeah. And he wanted to be an athlete. And even on what's going on in the background, a lot of people think they know who that is, but there was 2 of the Detroit Lions. Mel Farr, you know the Farr family.
What?
Yes, sir. Mel Farr and what was the other defensive back? Lim Barney. That was him. They're doing all that talking in the background. And,
oh, yeah. Hey, brother. I remember all that part.
That was Mel Farr and Lim Barney. They both were all pro, the Detroit Lions. But that was Marvin. Marvin was all over the place. A great man, died too soon. That's just one of my stories about Motown.
The reason why I asked you about that, because when I started this whole thing of Music for Global Change, I looked at my heroes, right?
Yes.
And when Marvin had the courage to buck Berry Gordy and say, "No, I got to write something about this war. I got to tell people what's going on." That's where that title came from.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so then, John Lennon,
right?
When he did Imagine Peace, but he called it Imagine.
Man.
Okay, yes. That was bigger than all the Beatle tunes that he ever wrote.
Oh man, giant.
But let us hear from some of your heroes in the music conscious world.
Oh wow, man. Well, that brings up another aspect of my involvement in the music game. As a teenager, my brother-in-law was a writer, songwriter, and he wrote for Dale Shannon. Remember the pop star? So I was always in the studio with him. And Harry Balk was the owner of that record label. Little Willie John was on his label also, the great blues singer, Little Willie John. But I was there and I was learning, even as a teenager, what talent was really like, how it was refined once a person got signed to a label. When I answered the question about who was somebody who I really looked at to as being like, "Ooh, man, this is like ice cream," one was Marvin. And because of his mind, you just said it. How would somebody go into somebody like Berry Gordy, even though they were related at the time by marriage, and say, "I'm not going to do what I've been doing"? Hey, that hitchhike stuff, and that's gone.
Yeah.
That's not me anymore. I'm
Yeah.
going to talk about, as you know, his brother had been in Vietnam, and it really inspired this whole thing. Nobody can sing like Marvin Gaye.
No.
The closest next to him, I think, in terms of who I would look up to as a singular kind of guy that stood out, was Teddy Pendergrass.
Okay.
Teddy had a vocal style that was so unique,
Yeah.
like Marvin's, that you can't forget him. Smokey, but not in the same way. Smokey, as you know, is a great writer. You could see the field I had to pick from, and it was hard.
Yeah. The cool thing about Barry, though, is everybody had their own style. He at least found vocalists that had their own style, man. And that's what I do.
Right.
Even though, and I want to have you back because we need to talk about the Funk Brothers. People don't know.
Oh, please.
If people don't know, I must have been about, I don't know, 14 or 15 when I went to my first Motown review.
Yes.
And the Supremes came out, the Four Tops came out, the Miracles,
Right.
but the same band was playing behind all of them.
Absolutely.
And that was
Absolutely.
the funk, and how they segued into the next song. And
Absolutely.
I mean, they come out and do about 5-6 songs, and then here comes the next act.
Right.
Like, I'm going to do music for global change. My festivals like that.
Yes.
I've done a lot of duets all over the world with different people, but I'm gonna get one band, and then I'll have them come on and do 4 or 5 of their songs and stuff, and maybe the song that I did a duet or wrote with them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Tom, you got another question?
Loads, but I'll go with a little bit more about Motown, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Did you have any idea that when you were sort of acting as liaison for the company, that it was going to become as huge as it did? Was it something that you had that you could visualize, or it just happened again, or how did that come about?
You know what, Tom, that's an excellent question, because yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
When you know that talent is coming out every wall and every house,
Yeah.
that says a whole lot about where this thing was going. Barry was, of course, a genius.
Right.
When it came to finding the right people for the right situation, as you pointed out, Scott. But the talent was there. So you began to get that feeling real early that this is going to blow up in a way that no one had ever seen before.
Right.
From this whole neighborhood setting, to be a global thing, talking about global.
Right.
And it happened in a very short period of time. But Barry was smart enough to do a lot of other things in terms of making sure the talent stayed fresh.
Right.
That's another reason why he bought Golden World, because you can see what that brought out, right? You got Edwin Starr, you got Parliament, that was before the other side of Parliament. And he got some other acts, that Rare Earth, that came out under Motown. So it's like he had perception that was rare, because nobody had ever seen anything happen like this. There certainly wasn't a pattern for it. And was he ready for it? I think so. Because he proved that he was ready to deal with it. But yeah, Tom, to answer your question, I certainly felt that it was happening. Here's the other aspect of what he did. I mentioned Harry Balk, who owned this record label. He and Harry were very good friends. As a matter of fact, when Barry went to LA to start filming, start doing movies, Harry Balk, if you Google it, you'll see that Harry Balk took over as president of Motown.
Okay.
So he didn't have enemies.
Right.
He made sure that everybody was on the same page. And I'm going to remember you. That was his whole thing.
Yeah.
So he remembered Harry from the days when they both were struggling.
Yeah.
And he brought Harry in as president of Motown when he started filming to take over day-to-day operation. Yeah. So, wow. From nothing to whatever.
Everything. Yeah.
Everything.
What I love about him was his test marketing.
Yes.
They would go in and record a song with artists, right?
Right.
And then he'd go down to one of the local spots, and he give the DJ, here's $20, man, put this on after that song. Right. And this is the test marketing part that I love. He said if 50 people jumped up out of their seat, he would put that song out the next day.
Yes. Yes, absolutely true.
That's brilliant. Son, you got another question?
Lin, do you have any advice? I mean, clearly, you've been in this industry for many years, tons of experience. Do you have any advice for young or up and coming artists in these days?
Oh, absolutely. Learn the business. When a person has talent, they focus in on, I'm really talented. Mm-hmm. And that's probably true. But that doesn't mean anything because we have many, many talented people who never, ever.
Millions.
I'll testify that they never, ever were heard of. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know great singers right now who will never have a chance to be heard globally.
Right.
Simply because they don't know how to work the system. The system works with you having knowledge.
Okay.
And if you go in knowing the business, you know about publishing, you know about songwriting, credits, et cetera, that's a part of your education. So along with your rehearsing, you also need to be doing your homework. Mm-hmm. Because this business, as we all know, can turn you upside down and throw you out. Get good representation.
Okay.
That doesn't mean your brother-in-law. It doesn't mean your buddy who you grew up with necessarily. Yeah. But it could be. Mm-hmm. But they have to have the same knowledge. You can't have somebody who's a cheering section and they don't know the business. Okay. You have to have somebody who's an expert in the game.
Lin, I love you so much, man. Thank you for coming on, man. This is so cool.
It was great.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us.
I love you. Love to have you back too, man. And
whenever you feel that's the right time, man, I'm here for you. You know how we do.
And hopefully we can get your endorsement for Music for Global Change Movement.
You got it. I told you that when you first started.
Yeah.
I think. And I'm glad you're exposing these artists too. Like my girl, Sana Casita.
Yeah.
People like that.
Thank you,
fellas, thank you so much for having me.
Much
Bryant,
love, brother.
All right. Much love to you. Talk to you.
Peace.
Take care.
Music can save the world. Music can save the world. If we all get together, music can save the world. Yeah. Music can save the world. Music can save the world. If we all come together, music can save the world.
Thank you so much for watching. To stay up to date, please click subscribe and hit the bell. You can also join our group on Facebook and find us on LinkedIn and Instagram.